Good evening and welcome to Postmark Filmworks series, Our Bridges, Stories from When. I'm Deborah Cathryn, a Campbell County artist and board member of Postmark. Our format for this series begins with a short reading from literature. Tonight's selection is Being a Boy, from the complete writings of Charles Dudley Warner, Volume 4. Our author, Charles Warner, was born in Plainfield, Massachusetts, a rural area, then, on September 12, 1829, and died on October 20th, 1900. His father passed away when Charles was 5 years old, and he was sent to live with a guardian on a farm in a rural area. As an adult, he had chronic health problems. He worked as a surveyor in Missouri, practiced law in Chicago, which was unsuccessful. Then he relocated to Connecticut, where he became a newspaper editor, and also joined the editorial staff of Harper's Magazine. Interestingly, he became friends with Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain, and he edited a book with him. During the Civil War, he published lighter articles in an attempt to distract readers from the conflict. His humorous essays on working in his garden, written in 1870, were very popular, and he traveled widely and lectured frequently. He was actively interested in prison reform and in park supervision and the arts, writing with humor, personal charm, and a great love of the outdoors. He's best remembered and quoted for some of his special remarks. The only thing raised on city land is taxes. Everybody complains about the weather, but nobody does anything about it. Politics makes strange bedfellows. Let us begin. Being a boy. One of the best things in the world to be is a boy. It requires no experience, though it needs some practice to be a good one. The disadvantage of the position is that it does not last long enough. It is soon over. Just as you get used to being a boy, you have to be something else, with a good deal more work to do and not have so much fun. And yet, every boy is anxious to be a man and is very uneasy with the restrictions that are put upon him as a boy. Good fun as it is to yoke up the calves and play work, there's not a boy on a farm but would rather drive a yoke of oxen at real work. What a glorious feeling it is indeed when a boy is for the first time given the long whip and permitted to drive the oxen, walking by their side, swinging the long lash and shouting, "Gee, buck! Ah, golden! Whoa, bright!" and all the rest of that remarkable language until he's red in the face. If I am ever a boy again on a farm, I shall speak gently to the oxen and not go screaming around the farm like a crazy man. And I shall not hit them a cruel cut with the lash every few minutes because it looks big to do so. And I cannot think of anything else to do. I never liked lickings myself, and I don't know why an ox should like them, especially as he cannot reason about the moral improvement he is to get out of them. I once taught my cows Latin. I don't mean that I taught them to read it, for it is very difficult to teach a cow to read Latin or any of the dead languages. A cow cares more for her cud than she does for all the classics put together. But if you begin early, you can teach a cow or a calf, if you can teach a calf anything, which I doubt, Latin as well as English. There were 10 cows which I had to escort to and from pasture night and morning. To these cows, I gave the names of the Roman numerals, beginning with unus and duo, and going up to decim. Decim was, of course, the biggest cow of the party, or at least she was the ruler of the others, and had the place of honor in the stable and everywhere else. I admire cows, and especially the exactness with which they define their social position. Nothing is stricter than the etiquette of a party of cows. Among cows, as I say, the question is settled in short order and in a different manner from what it sometimes is in other society. It is said that in other society there is sometimes a great scramble for the first place, for the leadership as it is called, and that women and men too fight for what is called position. And in order to be first, they will injure their neighbors by telling stories about them and by backbiting, which is the meanest kind of biting there is, not accepting the bite of fleas. But in cow society, there's nothing of this distraction in order to get the first place at the crib or the farther stall in the stable. If the question arises, the cows turn in, horns and all, and settle it with one square fight, and that ends it. I have often admired this trait in cows. Besides Latin, I used to try to teach the cows a little poetry. And it is a very good plan. It does not do the cows much good, but it is very good exercise for the boy farmer. I used to commit to memory as good short poems as I could find and repeat them when I got to the pasture. Boys in general would be very good farmers if the current notions about farming were not so very different from those they entertain. What passes for laziness is very often an unwillingness to farm in a particular way. Well, for instance, some morning in early summer, John is told to catch the sorrel mare, harness her into the spring wagon, for father is obliged to drive over to the Corners to see a man about some cattle, to talk with the road commissioner, to go to the store for the women folks, and to attend to other important business. And very likely he will not be back till sundown. It must be very pressing business, for the old gentleman drives off in this way somewhere almost every pleasant day, and appears to have a great deal on his mind. Meantime, he tells John that he can play the ball after he has done up the chores. As if the chores could ever be done up on a farm. He's first to clean out the horse stable, then to take a bill hook and cut down the thistles and weeds from the fence corners in the home mowing lot and along the road towards the village, to dig up the docks round the garden patch, to weed out the beet bed, to hoe the early potatoes, to rake the sticks and leaves out of the front yard. In short, there's work enough laid out for John to keep him busy, it seems to him, till he comes of age, and at half an hour to sundown, he is to go for the cows. And mind he don't run 'em. "Yes, sir," says John. "Is that all?" "Well, if you get through in good season, you might pick over those potatoes in the cellar. They are sprouting. They ain't fit to eat." And the old gentleman mounts his wagon and drives away down the enticing road with the dog bounding along beside the wagon and refusing to come back at John's call. John half wishes he were a dog. The dog knows the part of farming that suits him. He likes to run along the road and see all the dogs and other people. And he likes best of all to lie on the store steps at the corners, while his master's horse is dozing at the post, and his master is talking politics in the store with the other dogs of his acquaintance, snapping at mutually annoying flies, and indulging in that delightful dog gossip which is expressed by a wag of the tail and a sniff of the nose. Nobody knows how many dogs' characters are destroyed in this gossip, or how a dog may be able to insinuate suspicion by a wag of the tail, as a man can by a shrug of the shoulders, or sniff a slander, as a man can suggest by raising his eyebrows. There are so many bright spots in the life of a farm boy that I sometimes think I should like to live the life all over again. I should almost be willing to be a girl if it were not for the chores. There's a great comfort to a boy in the amount of work he can get rid of doing. Boys have a great power of helping each other to do nothing, and they're so innocent about it and unconscious. "I went as quick as ever I could," says the boy. His father asks him why he didn't stay all night when he's been absent 3 hours on a 10-minute errand. The sarcasm has no effect on the boy. Going after the cows was a serious thing in my day. I had to climb a hill, which was covered with wild strawberries in the season. Could any boy pass by those ripe berries? And dozens of things good to eat or to smell that I could not resist. It sometimes even lay in my way to climb a tree to look for a crow's nest, or to swing in the top and to try if I could see the steeple of the village church. It became very important sometimes for me to see that steeple, and in the midst of my investigations, the tin horn would blow a great blast from the farmhouse, which would send a cold chill down my back in the hottest days. I knew what it meant. It had a frightfully impatient quaver in it, not at all like the sweet note that called us to dinner from the hayfield. It said, "Why on earth doesn't that boy come home? It is almost dark and the cows ain't milked." A boy on a farm is nothing without his pets, at least a dog, and probably rabbits, chickens, ducks, and guinea hens. A guinea hen suits a boy. It is entirely useless and makes a more disagreeable noise than a Chinese gong. A dog is of great use on a farm, and that is the reason a boy likes him. He is good to bite peddlers and small children, and run out and yelp at wagons that pass by, and to howl all night when the moon shines. And yet, if I were a boy again, the first thing I should have be is a dog. For dogs are great companions and as active and spry as a boy at doing nothing. Say what you will about the general usefulness of boys, it is my impression that a farm without a boy would very soon come to grief. What the boy does is the life of the farm. He's the factotum, always in demand, always expected to do the 1,000 indispensable things that nobody else will do. Upon him fall all the odds and ends, the most difficult things. After everybody else is through, he has to finish up. His work is like a woman's, perpetually waiting on others. Everybody knows how much easier it is to eat a good dinner than it is to wash the dishes afterwards. Consider what a boy on a farm is required to do. Things that must be done, or life would actually stop. It is understood in the first place that he is to do all the errands, to go to the store, to the post office, and to carry all sorts of messages. If he had as many legs as a centipede, they would tire before night. His 2 short limbs seemed to him entirely inadequate to the task. He would like to have as many legs as wheel has spokes, and rotate about in the same way. Sunday morning was not an idle one for the farmer boy. He must rise tolerably early, for the cows were to be milked and driven to pasture. Family prayers were a little longer than on other days. There were the Sunday school verses to be relearned, for they did not stay in mind overnight. Perhaps the wagon was to be greased before the neighbors began to drive by, and the horse was to be caught out of the pasture, ridden home bareback and harnessed. The boy remembers how his mother's anxiety was divided between the set of his turnover collar, the parting of his hair, and his memory of the Sunday school verses. And what a wild confusion there was through the house in getting off for meeting. Already the deacon's mare with a wagon load of the deacon's folks had gone shambling past. Wagon after wagon went along the sandy road. It was a great delight to the farmer boy to see all this procession of horses and to exchange sly winks with the other boys, who leaned over the wagon seats for that purpose. Occasionally, a boy rode behind with his back to the family, and his pantomime was always something wonderful to see and was considered very daring and wicked. A boy may not be very wicked and yet not need or see the need of rest. Neither his idea of rest nor work is that of older farmers. Doing the regular work of this world is not much, the boy thinks. But the wearisome part is the waiting on the people who do the work. And the boy is not far wrong. This is what women and boys have to do on a farm, wait upon everybody who works. The trouble with the boy's life is that he has no time that he can call his own. He is like a barrel of beer, always on draft. The men folks, having worked in the regular hours, lie down and rest, stretch themselves idly in the shade at noon, or lounge about after supper. Then the boy, who's done nothing all day but turn grindstone and spread hay and rake after and run his little legs off at everybody's beck and call, is sent on some errand or some household chore in order that time shall not hang heavy on his hands. The boy comes nearer to perpetual motion than anything else in nature. Only it is not altogether a voluntary motion. The time that the farm boy gets for his own is usually at the end of a stint. In my day, it used to take very sharp work to gain anything, but we were always anxious to take the chance. I think we enjoyed the holiday in anticipation, quite as much as we did when we had won it. Unless it was training day or 4th of July or the circus was coming, it was a little difficult to find anything big enough to fill our anticipations of the fun we would have in the day or 2 or 3 days we had earned. We did not want to waste the time on any common thing. Even going fishing was hardly up to the mark, for we could sometimes do that on a rainy day. Going down to the village store was not very exciting and was, on the whole, a waste of our precious time. Life was apt to be a little blank even on the holidays for which we had worked so hard. If you went to see another boy, he was probably at work in the hayfield or the potato patch, and his father looked at you askance. You sometimes took hold and helped him so that he could go and play with you, but it was usually time to go for the cows before the task was done. The fact is, or used to be, that the amusements of a boy in the country are not many. When reading Charles Dudley Warner's essays and recollections, I was struck with the universality of each episode, even though these were written about observations made well over 100 years ago, including during our Civil War. Today's observations about cows seem as if they could be about cows today, and about children complaining about nothing to do in a rural area, or how much work they're assigned to do at home. And sometimes the anticipation of something seems either a lot better or a lot worse than the reality of the actual event. I remember being thrilled at a very young age to go on a drive in the countryside to see my very first cow up close. And I was planning to climb between the fence rails and over the Queen Anne's lace. That was a weed that is still called Queen Anne's lace today, I think. It was my grandmother's favorite bloom. I just couldn't wait to pet the cows. Well, the first time I ever saw that cow, it was so beautiful standing in the field, just like the ads for Elsie, only lacking the daisy chain necklace. Then I went up to the fence, and it was so huge, I became afraid. Then, when it got near, it had mucus running out of its nose, and it was so slimy and icky. Then there were flies all over its face, and it's all over its body, and this huge tail kept smacking and swatting, and I was afraid I would get smacked by that dirty hairbrush looking thing at the end of that heavy looking tail. Then, to top it all off, I looked down, and my mother said, wait, don't climb the fence, there's a cow pie. Well, that was my mother's word for it. There was a giant brown pie of muddy-looking detritus with flies and other creatures buzzing around. Then the cow opens its mouth, and out drops some half-chewed something or other, and it let out a very loud shrieking moo. Well, or maybe it was me who shrieked. I forget. But I still loved the milk and the whole cream that the milkman brought in the bottle with the bubble of cream on top. I never could understand how cream that was so heavy would lay on top of the milk, which seemed to be so much lighter, but it did. And then I remember when the cows were called to the barn, they went in order, just like we just read. Did you grow up on a farm or know someone who did? Did they have to do chores every single day of the week, Sunday or not? Or did you observe a pecking order in the cows or farmyard animals? Did it remind you of humans? Well, now is the time when I point out that this program, Our Bridges, Stories from When, is about all of our stories, not just mine. I invite you to share a story or a letter or a moment from your life when you thought about something while I was reading this section from Charles Dudley Warner's Observations and Remarks. Maybe you thought of something completely different that had nothing to do with cows. On the last Wednesday of this month at 8:30 p.m., right here on WLAF Channel 12 in LaFollette, we'll be sharing the stories you tell. We've asked a few friends from Postmark to respond, but we always have room for more. And we're very interested in hearing your stories. The way to get in touch will be on the screen in just a minute. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Postmark's Our Bridges, Stories from When. I'm Deborah Cathryn, and I'm looking forward to seeing you next time and hearing from you with your stories. I hope you have a good night, and I wish you good memories.